Hi guys, Samantha from Jessima Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create some easy beginner polymer clay earrings. Now, to start off with, I'm going to be using Primo Translucent, not Primo White Translucent, Primo Translucent, and there is a difference. Primo Translucent, it will say that on the package, gives a yellow tint after it has been baked, whereas Primo White Translucent will give a slightly blue tint. So just bear that in mind when you're choosing a translucent when working with Primo. This is Primo Polymer Clay. Just bear that in mind. Now I've just taken it straight from the block. I am not going to condition it, and I'm just going to take that and chop it into fine pieces like so. And the reason you don't condition it is because it will make the clay quite soft, and I want it to hold sharp edges and not squish and stick to one another while I do that. So just continue chopping like so until you've got them down to a size that you like, or roughly half a centimetre each. Okay, and there we go. Now it will end up looking quite uneven, so you're going to have tiny pieces and big pieces, and that's why I said roughly half a centimetre each, but you want to make sure that all of those stay somewhat separate. Okay, now to make this easier, I would usually recommend putting it inside a bag and then putting alcohol inks and the metal leaf in, but that can be a little difficult to show on camera just because it doesn't show all that much. So I'm going to be working on a ceramic tile like I usually do and doing it on the tile, but if you want to keep it from being a mess at home, I highly recommend popping it into a little plastic baggie, popping the inks in, shaking it around, and then putting the metal leaf in and then shaking it around as well. But I want to show you what it looks like. So the alcohol inks that I'm going to be using today are this type here. I'm just going to hold there so you can see. This one. And then finally this one. Okay, and give those a good shake before you work with them because they've got metallic particles and you want to make sure that that's all mixed in properly. Okay, and now when working with alcohol inks, and this goes for any alcohol ink you use, especially when you're working with translucent clay and white as well, quite particularly, it will leach into the clay and create varying colour effects. So what I'm trying to get today is almost a pink finish, and that just comes from the purple leaking into the clay and creating weird colour shifts just because it leaches in. So when you're working with alcohol ink, if you aren't sure what you're going to end up with or want to make sure that you know what you're going to end up with, I would highly recommend doing a test before using it on a full batch of clay because the results vary wildly. So just keep that in mind when you are working with it. Okay, so I've dripped that all over, and I would recommend doing that in a bag so that it's nice and clean. And I'm also going to bring over some metal leaf. This is gold metal leaf. I will have the ones that I used linked in the description below. Okay, and then I also am going to add some of this turquoise metal leaf. Metal leaf also, depending on how they're coloured, can sometimes leach into the clay once they're mixed in. So that's also something to keep in mind. This one does kind of leak a little bit of its colour when mixed with the clay and will ultimately contribute towards the colour. I'll bring over another sheet because I want lots of that. Okay. And then I'm going to try to keep my hands clean. So I'm going to try and do most of the mixing. It's my little spoon. And the alcohol ink's dried a little bit. If it's dried a little and it's not moving as well as you would like it to, you can always give it a little spritz with some isopropyl alcohol. Okay, and any strength will work. Does not need to be a high one. Just any isopropyl alcohol will work, and that will just get the inks moving a little more. Okay, then mix it around until your translucent is all coated, and you can add more inks if you want to. I think I'm good on this, but you can add more at any time you want. And then once you've got it all mixed up together in such a way that you're happy with it, just leave it out in little bits like so and leave it to dry. I would recommend leaving it at least half an hour so that the ink's dry. You can leave it longer if you want to create more of a leaching effect in the clay. You'll actually end up with almost a border, almost like a smoke ring on the little pieces of clay. So I'm going to leave this for half an hour, let it kind of leach into itself and dry. And then we can press it together, make a cane and cut out our earrings. Okay, so it's been about half an hour. And so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick this up, just scrape it off the tile because it might stick a little bit, and I've just got a piece of paper here that I will pop it on for the moment because I want to clean the tile first. So just pop that out of the way and just give this a clean. The best way to clean up alcohol ink is again with isopropyl alcohol. I find it quite easy, and a baby wipe will work. Clean that up, and then we can move on. Bring that over, and it should be nice and dry. You can see it doesn't leave all that much on the piece of paper. It's a good way to test whether it's dry enough. Now, I usually would use gloves, but I'm out at the moment, so I'm just going to use my hand, which is fine. We shouldn't have too much transfer. And just squish that together. At this point you would have taken it out of the bag as well. If you were using one, you would have taken it out of the bag to let it dry. But just press that all together and spend a bit of time on this because you want to make sure that this is well stuck together. So you want to form it into a rough rectangular shape, but give it a bit of time. And remember, we didn't condition this, so it's going to be a little firm when you do this. So by doing this, you're warming it up. So don't feel afraid to overwork it a little bit, I guess. And just flip on the side, press, flip, and just keep doing that until you stop seeing these major cracks showing up. It should be pretty smooth around the sides. So just keep doing that, working the clay, getting it to stick together, and then we can cut out slices. Okay, and there we go. Then once you've kind of got it to the point where it's all sticking together, keep in mind we're going to be burnishing it a little bit in a minute, so it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want it to be warm, soft and pliable. Once you've got that good to go, then we're going to slice off our pieces. In the first bit I'm going to slice quite thin. You can see there how it looks, and I'm actually going to make all of the slices thin because we're working with translucent here, and the thinner your slices, the more light will shine through later on once you've cut out your pieces. So just continue slicing. I'd say roughly 1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters thick each time. Also, if you are not confident in your slicing ability, I would practice on just like a block of leftover clay or just any solid colour clay that you can just mix straight back up. Practice, get a feel for how it should be, and then you can use that skill on the canes. So you can always practice on something that has no consequences if you mess up. Okay, now the end pieces I'm going to put to the side. You can use those, but they require a bit more sanding because they will have one side that has a lot of alcohol ink and metal leaf and such on it. We want pieces that are nice and clear. And I'm just going to pop them together like so. And again, the clay is quite soft and easy to work with, or it should be. So I'm just going to press them together. We are going to be doing a fair bit of sanding after this is baked, So don't worry too much about it being perfectly clean right now. The cleaner you can make it before baking, the less sanding you have to do, but we are still going to need to do a bit. And just shape them into one another, like so. And that's why you want the slices to all be pretty much the same thickness. They don't have to be exact, but as close as you can is the best. Grab a piece of paper and give it a thorough burnish to get those slices all together. You can use your finger or you can use a roller. Do not roll like this. Burnish like so until it's flat and even. Okay, and there we go. That's how it should look. Nice and flat. There's one spot here actually that I still need to do. Also, don't reuse the same side of the paper because you will have some little alcohol ink remnants if you need to reburnish. It will end up getting on the clay and making a mess, so always swap sides if you're going to do that. Okay, and you should be able to feel if it's flat. Okay, but that should do. Also, make sure that at this point, if you've burnished it onto a tile that you can put into the oven, then good, you don't have to worry about the next step. If you haven't burnished it onto a tile that can go in the oven, lift it up, pop it onto a tile that can go into the oven, and then reburnish it so it's stuck down to the tile, because this is just going to make it easier so that the cutters don't stick in, so the clay doesn't stick in the cutters. And we're going to be sanding the back anyway, so it doesn't matter if we have some shiny spots. I'm going to take the cutters, and when I do this, you can dip them in cornstarch, but I find that semi-cutting, lifting it out so that you unstick it, and then cutting again generally helps a lot with it sticking. That came out quite clean, and I'll do the same here. Press in, lift up part of the way through, and then cut the whole way. Again, you can put cornstarch if you want one. Another thing that you can do is put some cling wrap over the top and press the cutters in as well. That gives a domed effect, so it's not without its drawbacks if you don't want a dome, because we're going to be resining these and I don't want a dome, but that's something that you can do if you're having trouble with cutters sticking. And I'm just going to grab another one. Okay, then I got a little bit over here, but I can use that in leftover techniques. Now, because it's stuck down to the tile, it will stick quite a bit, so you're not going to get a nice clean peel up, but that's fine. That means that that's what helped the clay from sticking in the cutters. So just lift that up as best you can, and I am going to end up using this in some kind of leftover technique. I have a playlist on the channel if you are interested in looking at that, and I should have linked that in the description below. If I haven't and you want to see it, just bug me in the comments and let me know that I haven't linked it, because I often forget to do that. But there we go. Put that to the side. Use it quite soon, because again the alcohol ink does leach, and so it is going to be continually changing as time passes. Don't leave this out. You want to bake this as soon as possible as well to prevent the colour from changing. And I'm going to see if I can pick that up without distorting it, because I would prefer to bake it on paper if possible, but you can just pop it straight into the oven. I'm not going to use those little middle pieces. Okay, and I'm not tapping around the sides. I can worry about that later once it has finished baking, but I'm just transferring them to a piece of paper. Okay, then I've just got them on the piece of paper, and I'm going to bake that for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature. And the colour should shift. The final colour shift is going to come when we put the resin on top. It should end up with a pinkish hue, so just bear that in mind when you bake it. Purples generally become quite a bit pinker when it comes to alcohol ink and translucent clay. Again, bake for a full hour at Primrose recommend temperature, and then we're going to give it a thorough sand. Okay, and there we go. That's how they will look once they've come out of the oven. And you can see along these lines here, the purple will have changed into a pink colour. And that's what I was saying about the alcohol inks looking a little different after they have baked. They'll even look different once the clay's cooled. When I took these out of the oven, they were a lot more purple. Now they've turned quite a bit more pink. So the next step is going to be to sand them. So just grab one of these, and they're still a little warm out of the oven, so I'm just going to pop them in a bowl of water off to the side. And I am going to sand them with wet, dry sandpaper. And I work with a 400, so here's the 400. And then I go up to a 600, then an 800, and then finally a 1200. And those are the grits that I work with. And all I do is I'll get the top and the sides of sand. And I generally do this over the sink. It's just easier to do that, but I'm going to show you how to do it quickly. And what this does is it cleans it up, gets rid of excess alcohol ink and metal leaf and paint and such. Well, there's no paint in this one, but it gets rid of extra stuff and cleans up the piece. Sanding along the sides will get rid of any of that fluff that we had. So there you can see that's cleaner than that edge. And also do the back, because this is a double-sided piece. So spend your time sanding this. You don't have to go all the way up to a 1200 because we are going to be putting resin on this. A 800 should do. Important thing, once you've finished sanding it, I would recommend doing it underwater because you get less silt that way. But once you've finished sanding it, pop them back into the oven for about 5 minutes to make sure that they're completely dry if you're going to be putting resin on them, because water and resin just don't mix together, and especially the resin I use ends up bubbling if there is any moisture in or on the clay. So pop it in the oven for 5 minutes, let it heat back up again, let it cool properly without any water, and then we can get onto the resining. Okay, then once they're out of the oven, they should have a matte but clean finish to them. And these are a little warm still, but they will do. Now, when sanding, I find that the pot that was facing up and we pressed down on with the cutter, so the side facing up, will have a slight dome on it, and then the back will be almost completely flat, especially if you sand it in this motion where you're just pressing down on the sandpaper and not sanding it like I was showing you. And so the back side I'm going to apply resin to, because we've got a nice sharp edge, which means that the resin won't spill over the edge and just makes the process easier. And then on the domed side I'm going to apply gloss varnish, so we've got 2 finishes on either side. Now, if I am going to apply resin and a gloss varnish at the same time on a piece, I always will go with the gloss varnish first, just because it's not as temperamental as the resin, and if it gets slightly marked up, it doesn't show up nearly as much as it would on the resin. The resin is always the last step before I drill. So I'm going to turn these all to the kind of semi-domed side, and I'm going to use a gloss varnish. The one that I'm using today is Resin water-based gloss varnish, and can't show that because it's in a big jar off to the side. But again, Resin polyurethane water-based gloss varnish. And I'm just going to grab some of that on a brush, and let's see, we'll do this one. And it will start out with this kind of milky appearance and will clear up after it's dried, so don't worry about it looking milky at this point. That's perfectly fine. Another gloss varnish you can try is the Pearl X varnish. That one I use a fair bit as well. Or you could even sand these to a higher level grit and give them a buff. That can work as well. Just give them a good varnish. I go around on the sides as well, and then give them at least an hour to dry before moving onto the resin. Okay, and here they are now that they're dry. And I've given them 2 coats total so that they have a nice, clean, shiny finish. And this will work quite well, especially if you don't want to work with resin or don't have resin. Gloss varnish works really well, so don't discount it. It can give a really nice finish. Now, I am going to turn these over. I have left the varnish to cure overnight just so that it is not sticky at all. And I am now going to pop the resin on. Here is the resin that I am using. There's a bunch of UV resin brands that you can get. This is just the one that I'm going to be using today. Okay, and I'm just going to pop that on as well. And this does give a different look from the varnish. It will give it a much more glossy finish with a bit of a dome at the end. And we'll be able to compare the two because we do have both of them now. But just pop it on like so. Okay, and put on less than you think you're going to need because you can always add more. You cannot. It's very hard to take away once you've applied it, and that's when you end up getting drips. And it's another reason why you should sand your piece, because unsanded pieces of clay seem to cause the resin to pull away from the edges more, in my experience. So if you can sand the clay when you're going to apply resin, I would advise doing it, even if it's only 1 grit, because it just kind of takes away any oils on the surface and just makes that resin spread better. So you'll just do what I'm doing here with all of them, then you'll put them into the UV light for at least 15 minutes just to get it to cure correctly, and then we can finish them off. Okay, then after curing it for about 15 minutes, it should be nice and hard, smooth to the touch. If there's any stickiness at all, pop it back into the UV lamp. And once you're good to go, then I'm going to take a pin drill and I'm going to drill a hole. I've already started a bit on this one just because the beginning bit can be a little slow because the resin is a very smooth surface, and so it can be a little difficult to get that hole going. But once you do, just take a little bit of time. Resin is quite hard when it's cured properly, and so it can take a bit to drill through it. I drilled my holes after I've put the varnish and baked the piece and everything. Just because I get a cleaner hole, I don't risk distorting the piece. I don't have resin spilling into places that I don't want it. I used to resin with holes, and oh, that was a painful experience. So especially if you're using resin, I highly recommend drilling the hole afterwards. There we go, we've broken through the resin. Now we're going to drill through the rest of the piece. Once you've got through the resin, it should be quite quick to do. There we go. Almost through. But yeah, I've already done the other 3 pieces. This is the last one to do. And there we go. And just brush away the excess, and generally I will go back through the other way. I always drill resin side first because it presses down on the resin, because sometimes if you go through the other way and push up towards the resin to drill, it lifts off the clay. So I would recommend going resin first. Okay, then I'm just going to grab a little gold jump ring, pop that through. It should go through. It worked with the other one. Here we go. And a ear wire. And then close that jump ring. And then I will spin it all the way around to have that end hidden in the hole. So you've just got, oops, a nice smooth ring. And there we go. It's that simple. And there we go. There are our final pieces. And they look really nice on both sides. You can see that the varnish side looks quite nice. I still prefer the resin personally with this technique just because it gives a beautiful glass-like finish. But it's nice to play around with the varnish as well, so don't feel like you have to use resin. But yeah, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I will get to those as soon as possible. And if you would like to support the channel so I can continue doing videos like this one, please do consider joining. There is a join button below the video where you can become a member of the channel, or there is a Patreon as well. I post exclusive videos on there every single month that are not posted on YouTube and that go a little bit more into complicated projects. But yeah, if you would like to support the channel, please do consider checking it out. And again, thank you for watching the video and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.